And what we're discussing today is loosely it's considered the laws of murder. Now, as we've already learned in terms of the Noahide laws, we can have a title, and within that we have enormous amount of law, of legal rulings under that broad title. So as we're going to discuss today, a very practical component of don't murder is don't embarrass, is don't gossip. No, you're not allowed to gossip. And no, you're not allowed to embarrass. And that's actually a branch of don't murder. So even though you might think I haven't been tempted lately to murder, but it's still good to know whatever laws I can cull that are relevant in our discussion, or we hopefully have some relevance. So we are doing this from the book. This is a commercial, The Divine Code. Wonderful for every person to own personally.
I just got one.
Oh, good. I remember we discussed it. The different colors. Good, 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 good. I'm glad you got it. Just because, this is like the Noahide handbook, in terms of practical, not in terms of philosophy per se. There's a lot of books out there in terms of the philosophical underpinnings, the belief system. But in terms of literally the nitty-gritty practical law, this is a good book. All right, so we're looking here at the idea of the prohibition of murder, and now we're looking specifically at the idea of our obligation to endanger ourselves or not to help someone else that's at risk. To what degree do we have to sacrifice ourselves to help another person? And within that, there's lots of corollaries. Like, for example, in terms of the obligation to help another person. So again, why are we talking about helping another person? I thought we were talking about not murdering. Well, the broad categories don't murder, under which comes saving a person's life, under which comes all of the specificities of what you are obligated to do by God as part of being this moral Noahide who is not murdering and therefore saving another person, and therefore in what fashions is he obligated to help him. So, for example, as part of thou shalt not murder, it's prohibited to give bad advice. Now, obviously, sometimes we give bad advice because we don't know what we're talking about. So it doesn't mean that you erroneously gave bad advice and now you're going to get punished for it. It means you deliberately gave bad advice. You had some ulterior motive. You had something that you needed to happen. And to put that in place, you advise someone to do something because if they do this, it would be to your benefit. That is considered giving bad advice. Now we're saying bad advice, again, specifically to be obligated by God, meaning that it was significant enough that God's going to intervene and punish you. It will be advice that actually causes a person harm. Meaning if you said, you want to buy the oranges or the apples, I think you should buy the oranges because you're coming later to the store and you want to get apples. Okay, it was bad advice. It was bad advice for your own personal benefit, but it's not really harming him. So that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about advice that could really harm a person. Certain financial advice could create a lot of harm for another person. And if someone does this deliberately in order to harm the person, again, your goal might not be to harm the person. Your goal might just be the benefit you're going to get. But if you're giving bad advice that will cause harm to the other person, that is an offense against God. Now, similarly, every person is obligated to save another person if he is in a life-threatening situation. If he's facing bodily danger, if he's facing life-threatening danger. Meaning, if you would see someone walking and that's a dangerous area, you have an obligation to warn him, to say, no, I know the streets used to be safe, but the streets of Chicago are not safe anymore at this time of night if you're walking alone. That is advice that you're obligated to give according to God, because you have to try to protect him. You have to try to save him. He's not going to listen to you. That's his choice. But you have an obligation to try to help another person. If a person would see someone drowning, they have an obligation to jump in and try to save him. Now, obviously, if you don't know how to swim yourself, don't jump in to try to save him. That's not what God means, because that's not going to help. And then we'll have two people drowning. But we're saying in a rational way, if you actually do know how to swim, and maybe you really could save the other person, but I don't know, for whatever reasons you're holding back, God says, no, I want you to do this. Every human being should try to help every other human being. I don't care if you don't know his name. I don't care if you're not friendly with that type of person. A person's in danger, you have an obligation to save him. But again, as we're saying, if you see someone going into a certain situation where the only way to save him would be to put yourself in mortal danger, like the person who doesn't know how to swim trying to save someone who's drowning, which obviously makes no sense. But that God says, no, I don't want you to do that. If someone goes to a very dangerous area, so you're supposed to run after him yourself and go into this very dangerous area? No, you don't have to, because God would say, then we'll just have two people in danger. You could go with a group of people with some guns, with some ammunition, with some support. That would be wonderful. But if you're just putting yourself in danger in a way that's not really going to help the other person, it's just going to endanger you, bottom line. Or it will help the other person, but then you're going to lose your life in the process. God says, no, that's not what I mean. That's not what I'm asking for. A doctor has an obligation to heal. It's part of being a doctor. And the doctor has an obligation to heal people to the best of his capacity. If they're very ill, if it's a very minor issue, whatever it is, the doctor has to heal. Now, that doesn't mean the doctor isn't allowed to take money. The doctor is allowed to charge, of course, as we know doctors do. You can charge for the time you spend treating the patient. You could charge for whatever medicines you use to treat the patient. You can charge for your expertise and knowledge. All of that is completely permissible. But if a doctor refuses to heal someone, now again, in certain situations, maybe this doctor says, listen, everyone's taking my services for free because they know I'm a doctor and I have to heal them. I'm not giving services for free anymore. He's actually allowed to do that. But so that's not the issue. It's not a money issue. Yeah, I don't like that guy. I don't want to heal him. I don't even like him in the first place. Any doctor who would, for whatever reason, not heal someone in those situations is considered a very, very evil person. A doctor is supposed to heal. A doctor is God's emissary to heal. And we don't start discriminating which people are worthy of our services. And let's say that a person was sick and the doctor refused to heal him for whatever reason. Oh, your father messed over my father. I'm never going to help his son. Whatever. You come from that town. I don't like any people in that town. I'm not helping you. That type of illness, I don't like dealing with that type of illness. I'm not helping you. If God forbid a doctor refused to heal someone and then that person died as a result of his illness or wounds or whatever it was, the doctor is considered by God like a murderer. Again, the doctor didn't do anything to take away his life. But since the doctor could have healed him, could have tried to heal him at least, and refused to even try to heal him, oh, I don't want to deal with him. That's a terminally ill case. I have no interest wasting my time on that one. There's too many other people that have to see me. He would be a waste of my time. We're told that's very evil to say something like that. A life is a life is a life. A life is very, very, very valuable. So if a doctor would literally refuse to treat a person and the person dies from his illness, from his wounds, that doctor is considered a murderer. Now, it's not that human court would punish him for murdering, but from God's end, the doctor is considered a murderer. I gave you a gift. I gave you a gift to heal people, and you're not using it. You're not using it. You're choosing who to dole it out to. No. Another idea, similarly, if you would hear someone plotting to harm someone, plotting to do evil to another person, you have an obligation to warn the person. You also have the obligation to try to do whatever you can to forestall the plot. Maybe you can dissuade them, maybe you could bribe them, maybe you could distract them. Whatever you can do to stop them is also very, very admirable. But at the very least, you have an obligation to tell this person, so-and-so's plotting something against you. Watch out. That is not considered, as we're going to discuss soon, gossip. That's not considered forbidden gossip. That is considered very necessary information. If a person would be, or talking about yourself, if a person would be in mortal danger, and to help yourself, you need to use someone else's possessions. Like you're running away, you're in mortal danger, and you see a car and with a key in it. You could jump in and race away with that car to save your life. But then afterwards, of course, you have to come back and return it. And if it was a car chase and you smashed up that guy's car in the process of saving your life, you're allowed to do that. You're saving your life. A life. By the way, your life is a life. So you were saving a life, your own. But then obviously you have to repay the owner of that car for damaging his car in the process of saving your life. Meaning, we'd rather you damage a car and save your life. So it's a wise choice. But obviously the fact that you're allowed to grab that car at that moment to run away from your pursuers doesn't mean that you're not afterwards obligated to return it or financially compensate the person for his car or whatever else was going on. Now, obviously, the same way you can save your own life with someone else's possessions, if that's your only choice, and of course you're going to reimburse them afterwards, you could do the same thing to save someone else's life. If you see someone drowning and you see somebody's, I don't know, whatever, fishing pole that you could grab, it's not yours. You're not allowed to touch something that's not yours, but somebody's drowning. So if you pick up that fishing pole and extend it to the person could grab on it and you're going to use it to try to pull him out of the water. That's 100% permissible. Well, it's not yours. A life takes precedent. Again, if the fishing pole snapped in the process after you save the person, God willing, the person you saved has to reimburse him for his fishing pole. But that's okay. We'd rather you use a fishing pole, rely that the person will reimburse him. You don't have to ask him first as he's drowning, are you going to pay the guy back? Save the guy's life, do whatever you have to do, and then trust that this second person that you saved will reimburse the other person who's, in my little example, whose fishing pole you used for the rescue. Interesting question. With everything we said here, would a person have an obligation to donate an organ to help another person, like donating a kidney? What do you think, Robin?
I think it's like not an obligation, but it would be something that you would think about and do if you could.
That's exactly the right answer. Wow. Full points, 5 stars.
Thank you.
It's interesting. We are not obligated to donate a kidney for someone else because we're really giving away a piece of our own body, a vital organ. Yes, you can, and yes, people live and do it, but it's a very serious thought. My husband donated one of his kidneys to his brother, and obviously he did it. It was for his brother. He was a perfect match. I mean, it was a serious thought. Not that we weren't going to do it, but it's still a serious thought.
Mm-hmm.
So God is not obligating you to give away a kidney or something along those lines, even to save another person's life. But as Robin said, it is considered a very, very meritorious, wonderful, good thing to do. They're not obligated to. Now let's take the question a step further. What if you had a person who was terminally ill and you have another person, I don't know, a young, healthy man, but he was in a car accident and his heart went out or his lungs went out. And this person is terminally ill. He's going to die in a few hours, in a day. Based on what we've said so far, could you take his lungs, his heart, something of this 100% no question terminally ill person who's going to die in a few hours or in a day or so to give it to this other person who's for sure going to die if he doesn't get this heart or lungs or something like that, some vital, vital, vital organ? What do you think about that one?
It's kind of like what's the percentage that it could save their life? Could it save their life?
Let's say it could. If he got this heart, if his body doesn't reject it, obviously. But if his body does not reject this transplant, it would save his life. And without the transplant, he's going to die. And with the transplant, if the body accepts the transplant, it would save his life. And this person for sure is going to die. He's terminally ill, no question.
Oh, and then you're going to maybe give him a heart or the organ?
You're going to take the heart from the person who's terminally ill and give it to the person who, like in my example, was just in this massive car accident, must have this new heart, and if he has it, and if the body accepts it, he will live, and otherwise he will definitely die.
Well, it's worth a try again.
So actually here, no, we do not try that. Why? Why do you think God says no? Because if you take that heart or those lungs out of that terminally ill patient, you killed him.
Oh.
And we could say, yeah, but he's going to die anyway. The doctors guarantee he's going to die within the next 6 hours, within the next 12 hours, within the next 24 hours. The doctors know. Maybe he'll live 24 hours. He's for sure not going to live past 24 hours. Here you have this young, healthy person who would live if someone gave him a heart, if someone gave him lungs. But if he doesn't get that, he's going to die.
So it would be like affecting this person who is terminally ill and going to die, but he's not there yet. So you leave him be to go through his process.
Exactly. Even though this other person's going to die. Absolutely, he will. If he doesn't get that heart, if he doesn't get those lungs, he will die. And this is obviously very current and relevant and definitely something that happens. Occasionally this question is raised. I mean, unfortunately in our world, these things do happen. So it's very important to understand God's perspective. God says, no, I don't care that person is terminally ill. He's alive. As long as he's alive, he's alive. Life is a life. We never take away a life. So to take out his heart or take out his lungs means you killed him. We don't kill people. That's not what we do. But I need his heart for this other person who's going to die anyway, and he's going to die anyway, so at least let me save one of the two of them. That's God's calculation. That's not ours. We do not make that calculation. We do not say, this guy's going to die anyway, so let me take his organ and donate it to this person who now would have a chance to live. That's not our judgment. We leave that to God. We do not take away a life. We do not take out a vital organ from someone who is alive, because taking out that vital organ will kill them. And we don't care if the doctor says he has 30 minutes left, if he has an hour left, if he has 2 hours left. As long as he's alive, and we do not take the life of another person. So that's a very important thing to think about, because unfortunately in our world, we often hear different messages, and to understand the underpinning of the different messages is not really properly valuing life, not really understanding how enormously precious life is. Like people speak about quality of life. Should we keep this person alive? What type of quality of life will they have? That's a popular expression. God doesn't look at it that way. God says there's alive. As long as there's life, there's hope. As long as there's life, there's a chance. As long as there's life, who knows what's going to happen? Who knows, what the doctors will come up with. I was speaking yesterday with a woman whose daughter has a very, very rare degenerative disease, born deaf, and she's supposed to, according to the doctors, go blind. I'm like, well, nowadays we have this thing called cochlear implants. Yes, and her daughter has them, and thank God the cochlear implants today are so much better than they used to be 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I said, so who knows what the doctor will come up with in terms of blindness? Who knows? Who knows? As long as there's life, there's hope. As long as there's life, there's a chance. Who knows? And that's why we never have the ability to stop someone else's life, even in a case where we're told they're terminally ill and going to die in a very short amount of time. We never ever have the option, the thought, to take away life from one person to give it to another person. So that was one chapter and one section that could definitely have practical relevance. The second one, which probably has even more practical relevance, is the prohibition of embarrassing or gossiping. And we're looking at these ideas. We could be, I might embarrass someone, though I never mean to. And I probably have gossiped on occasion, though I really am sorry I did that. But you're putting it as a branch of thou shalt not murder? But yes, that is what we are told. We have 7 Noahide laws, and each one contains a wealth of subsidiary topics. And embarrassing a person and gossiping, which is a form of embarrassing a person, that's a version of murder. It's actually really good for us to think like that, because if I really think of embarrassing a person like murder, not that I ever want to hurt someone, but I probably would be more careful, even more careful. If I said, embarrassing person is a form of murder and gossiping is a form of embarrassing, how could I allow myself any slack to do this horrible thing that we all agree is horrible and gossip? We have a lot of permission slips we give to ourselves. Everyone does it. Once everyone does it, it can't be so bad, right? Because these are very wonderful people that are doing it, so it can't be so bad. Or whatever else we tell ourselves. I think everyone does it is probably the broadest cop-out line. But if you think, look what God's saying. Do not murder. Under that, do not embarrass. Under that, do not gossip. Gossip is a form of embarrassment, which is a form of murder. So that's what we're going to be discussing in this chapter, a lot of different laws along these lines. And again, because murdering, one branch of that is embarrassing, and one branch of embarrassing, a very common, strong branch of embarrassing, is gossip. So why do we have such a desire to do it? I don't know. I don't know why we give ourselves a permission slip over it. I don't know why, but it's something to really, really think about. And if this is how God is viewing it, this is how he's organizing his laws, that it ultimately is a branch of do not murder. That's what you're doing to a person. Of course, there's so many horror stories of how people's lives were completely destroyed by innocent or not so innocent gossip. It really can make us look at ourselves and say, all right, I can't fix the world, but I can fix myself. And if I fix myself, that's a road to fixing the world. So looking at some of the laws, just as it is forbidden to harm a person, and that's part of the prohibition of murder is don't harm a person, it's forbidden to harm another person through your speech. And this is very logical. This is very moral. This is very ethical. This makes perfect sense. We shouldn't have a problem with it. It shouldn't be like, oh no, really? God doesn't let? Why does it bother God if I do that? What does that mean? You can't humiliate another person. You can't embarrass another person. You can't even do something that I don't think that's so embarrassing. Yeah, but if the other person does, it's embarrassing. Like maybe they have a nickname they used to be called when they were like 5, and they don't want you to call them that anymore. They're like, I'm not embarrassing. Hey, I knew him when he was 5. Yeah, but he doesn't like that name anymore. He doesn't want you to say it anymore. He's humiliated by that name. It was cute when he was 5. It's not cute when he's 55. So even something like that, which seems so minor and innocuous, and you sincerely aren't trying to hurt the other person, but you're not getting it. They're saying, don't do this, and you're doing it. So the point we're making here is, in terms of hurting a person and humiliating a person, embarrassing a person, you could do that with your speech. You don't have to go over and slap them to humiliate them. You don't have to like pull the chair under them and have them crash on the floor to humiliate them. As I'm sure, of course, we all know how cutting words can be, how painful words can be. So when we're talking to another person, we have to really, really think about that. That's the sword, which is our tongue. And if we're doing something that maybe is embarrassing the other person, maybe is making them feel uncomfortable, we have to remember, don't murder, don't embarrass. Literally, God's viewing it as a subsidiary branch of murder. And again, we can't hurt him with words. We can't call him a name that embarrasses him. We can't tell him something that's embarrassing to him. Like, again, you could say, oh, I remember my children were discussing this. Really a very animated discussion. Can you tell, I mean, it sounds so silly to say, but if the person is overweight themselves, I think that was like the caveat, can they tell another person that they're overweight, that they're fat? And I was saying very strongly, no, you cannot. And my daughter was agreeing with me that you cannot. And a number of my sons, it must be a male female thing, did not get it. They're like, why not? If I'm fat and I'm comfortable with being fat, it's not embarrassing for me to tell someone else they're fat. I'm fat too. I'm fatter. So male logic. So I was like, it doesn't make a difference. It doesn't make a difference if you're completely comfortable with the issue. If it truly doesn't embarrass you, if you think it's wonderful, that doesn't mean the other person thinks like that.
Mhm.
So even something that you have the same issue yourself and you have no problem talking about the issue and you're totally comfortable with the issue. But if you know that another person is sensitive, or you don't know, but some people are sensitive to this issue, talking about it would be a form of embarrassment, subsidiary branch of murder. Like I gave the example of fat. You could do the same thing if someone would say, oh, I'm on Medicaid. Are you on Medicaid? I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. What's embarrassing about it? We pay our taxes. This is the government, and it's a hard economy now. I know loads of people on Medicaid. It doesn't make a difference. It doesn't make a difference if you're 100% right. It doesn't make a difference if many of your friends are on Medicaid and they all are totally comfortable talking about it. But obviously not everyone is. Obviously to some people that is very, very embarrassing. So if you don't know how this person feels about this topic that some people are sensitive to, though you think there's nothing wrong with it and you are totally comfortable talking about it, you can't talk to them about it. And that's considered embarrassing them. And that's humiliating them. And the fact that you could say, I tell everyone in the world I'm on Medicaid and I'm so comfortable with it, that's irrelevant. That in no way gives you permission to talk about something that someone else could be embarrassed about. So it's really something to think about, because obviously this requires a certain degree of sensitivity. Because if you're so comfortable with a topic, you truly don't think it's a problem talking about it. And since you truly don't think it's a problem talking about it, it might even be hard for you to wrap your head around the fact that, well, some people are sensitive. Actually, many people are sensitive. And again, if you don't even realize the problem, how should you realize the problem? To realize the problem, to not talk about it. And that is a degree of sensitivity we have to have. That we have to really vet our conversations. We have to really think before we talk. Sometimes you have something to say and it's interesting or exciting or will be something, but you're like, I don't know if the other person would appreciate it. I don't know if they would like that. It might make them uncomfortable. I literally had this yesterday with someone. Literally. I had something I thought on one hand would be sort of cool to share with someone, but I was like, I don't know if it's the most appropriate thing to say in this situation. And I was sort of torn because a piece of me was like, oh, it'd be so cool to say this and, maybe make the other person feel good about that I knew this fact about them and, whatever. And I was like, nah, but they might think like, now in this situation, this is what you're telling me? And I didn't say anything. Of course, for a woman to not say anything is difficult, right? But I literally went through the thought process. I mean, it was like sort of pretty obvious. I probably shouldn't have said anything, so I'm not giving myself any big credit here. I actually have to think about it, which somebody else will be like, duh, what do you have to think about that for? But my point is, we have to think. And sometimes it's hard for us to think because we're not used to thinking before we talk. And because if I'm not sensitive about it, why would I even think someone else is sensitive about it? But that's what God's demanding from us, to think enough that you could think, I'm adopted. I don't think it's an issue at all. I'm a convert. I don't think it's an issue at all. I definitely see this with converts. I see some converts that are so comfortable talking about the fact that they're a convert. They'll like tell it to you like when they're introducing themselves in the first 3 minutes. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with it at all. But then I know other converts that don't want you ever to realize they're a convert. And if one would say to the other something, we'd like, I tell everyone I'm a convert. It's like hi, my name is da 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 da. I'm a convert from and the other person doesn't want people to realize. She doesn't want it to be her greeting to other people. She doesn't want it to be public knowledge. Again and again, there's nothing wrong with the whole world knowing unless you're uncomfortable with that. So sometimes we really have to think, I don't know, is this something I'm comfortable with it, but is it possible this other person might not be? And if they're not, to really obviously screen our conversations. So the bottom line point of all this is, sorry, we have to think before we talk. And that could be so challenging for all of us, for me for sure. But imagine how much unwitting harm we would remove if we thought before we spoke. Because most of the time, if we thought, we'd figure it out. I'm totally comfortable, but I could figure out that a lot of people aren't. I wouldn't say that if I was thinking. So it's a really big point that God wants us to think before we speak. The sages say, for you to understand how severe this is, one who causes his fellow to pale in public, meaning like his face turns colors because he's embarrassed, does not have a portion in the world to come. That's pretty intense. That's a very, very, very strong statement. But the sages absolutely mean it. Absolutely mean it. Absolutely mean it. And we're saying here that this is pretty significant embarrassment enough that your face changes colors, literally, as of course we know happens sometimes when a person's embarrassed. And we're saying that God's going to punish the person. God would punish the person who did this, even if he wasn't trying to hurt the other person. He just, again, you don't have to be trying to hurt the person here for this. You're just really not thinking, really not getting it. Did anyone here ever have a situation like that where they said or did something not at all meaning to harm another person, but they did? Or did anyone have a situation where someone, hopefully not meaning to, but really embarrassed you and really made you feel like very, very, very violated, very harmed, very embarrassed, even though you are sure the other person had no intention to hurt you, but it really did?
Like, I'm sure that those happened on both sides. When I can't think of what they were now, but I'm certainly sure that that has happened.
And I'm sure you're right, because I'm sure it's a very common experience.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's pretty extreme because, especially as a Noahide, you could feel, oh, I have this pretty down pat. I know what God wants. I do it. I'm in my routine of giving charity, my routine of prayer, my routine of psalms, my routine of trusting God, my routine of living a good, moral, ethical life. But this area could be an Achilles heel for a lot of people.
Hmm.
And I think if we think about what the sages are saying, that if you would embarrass a person enough that their face turns color, which of course we know happens when a person, they could go pale, they could go red, whatever it is. I say it's personally, the person doesn't have a share of the world to come. Like, we mean it. That it is that significant. It is that severe. God so much is pained when you harm another person. And I think what Robin said is very true. It's a very common experience.
Yeah.
It's a common experience that we unwittingly, we're nice people, we're good people. If you weren't, you wouldn't be, participating in this class. But we, as a good person, didn't think before we spoke. Oops. Oops. I didn't mean to say that. I'm sorry. That was so stupid of me. Oh my, how did I say that? Your mouth runs away, way beyond your brain. The best you can do in that situation is sincerely apologize. Don't apologize in front of everyone else. It will just embarrass them further. But privately, to really sincerely apologize with all your heart. I had this once. I remember exactly what happened. It still blows my mind that it hurt the person. I totally didn't mean it. I don't even exactly remember how it happened, but I think I was giving a certain class. I was giving a class, like something about raising your daughter. I don't know, whatever, some parent education class. So I was promoting it, and I sent it on WhatsApp to, I don't remember, a bunch of people, like, just in case they know anyone that would want to attend, yeah, whatever. And one of the people I sent it to got really hurt because she didn't have children. And she said to me, she said, "How could you send this to me? Don't you know that I'm trying to have a child? And don't you know how hurtful it would be if knowing, you're giving a class to mothers?" And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I didn't even dream that it would cause her this type of hurt, but it did. And I felt obviously horrible. And of course, there was a piece of my brain that said, why should I make such a big deal about it? Like, I mean, you know, I wasn't even expecting her to do anything for my class. I was just sort of like, she's someone in my, I just was sort of sharing what I was doing. That's really why I sent it to her, just like to share what I was doing. It's nothing more than that. But I said to myself, no, 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 you can't apologize until you really feel her pain. To apologize when you think this is stupid, why is she so feeling so bad? Well, then that's not an apology. That's not real. So I really worked on myself to really feel how much pain she must be feeling to feel so hurt by this. And I really had to like go deep into myself and really connect it to my own places of pain and imagine if someone did this and, and unwittingly it would trigger this, and until I really, really, really felt her pain, like sincerely, absolutely, genuinely felt her pain. And from that place, I apologized to her. And then she completely accepted it. Even on a very subconscious level, she just knew how it was so enormously real to me at that point, how absolutely real her pain was, and how absolutely horrible I felt that I had, totally unwittingly, but I had been the trigger for her pain. So if a person does have their mouth go in front of their mind and we do say something and then we realize, or they let us know, which is obviously great because someone lets us know, we can apologize. If they don't let us know, we can never apologize. And we would not totally unaware. If this woman hadn't said anything to me, I would be 100% oblivious, 100% would never have realized that I did something to really hurt someone else. Not meaning to, but that doesn't take away the hurt. It's a little harder for you to repent if you don't even realize what you did wrong, but it doesn't take away the hurt because you don't know about it. So the best thing one can do if you find out because you were oops, or somehow that person told you, or that probably is pretty rare, maybe someone else told you, so and so's really hurt by what you said, you're like, what did I say? Oh, I didn't, is really to try to give such a sincere apology by really feeling their pain, not minimizing their pain, not trivializing their pain, not saying, whoa, why should they be upset by something like that? That's so silly. I mean, I'll apologize, but it's so silly. No, really, really, really feel the other person's pain. Make it your own pain, or make your own pain in a similar enough situation that you can relate it to their pain, and apologize from that space of really, really, really being in tune with the pain. And then, even though again, it could be completely subconscious on the person's part, they're not aware of exactly the work you're doing, but they feel it. They know your apology is really, really sincere. And then they accept it, God willing. If they don't, do all the work and apologize a second time. If they don't, do all the work and apologize a third time. We're told if we're trying to apologize for something, we have an obligation to try 3 separate times, 3 separate days to sincerely apologize with all our heart, with all our emotions, with all our sensitivity, to apologize, to rectify the damage we did without meaning to do it, but we did it. A very broad, unfortunately, category of embarrassing or harming a person is gossip. As I said before, we're all familiar with it. We're all way too familiar with it. Some of us not as much as others. Some of us work harder than others. Hopefully we've all improved. Hopefully we're better and better. Maybe some of us are like, I never do that. And some people say, does husbands count? Yes, it does. Sharing with your husband is still gossiping, absolutely. But for some reason, as I said, something in our society that some people still give themselves a pass. There is no pass. everyone does it is not a pass. Everyone does it means everyone is doing something very wrong, very harmful to society, very against God's will. And the only way we heal everyone is by healing ourselves. We take responsibility for everyone by taking responsibility for ourselves. And when we personally have overcome our issue, it's not just that we personally have transcended this. What we have done is going to help many other people in the world because we're all fused. We're all like one unit. So if you get stronger, the light you create is going to spread to other people and help them get stronger as well. So within gossip, there's like 3 broad categories, all of which are forbidden. There's what's called tale-bearing, there's what's called evil gossip, and then within the evil gossip, or with the tale-bearing for that matter, you could differentiate true and false. Because a lot of people, one of the excuses that people give themselves to allow themselves to do what God absolutely doesn't let is they say, but it's true. So guess what? God says, I know it's true. I still don't let. It's true is not permission to gossip. It's true is not permission to divulge information. Obviously, if it's false, it's even worse. If you make up a story about someone, it's even worse. If you make up a bad story about someone and how bad they are, and you're painting a horrible picture about someone who didn't even do any of this, it's far, far, far worse. But if you say completely true information, it's still very painful, very humiliating, and very painful to God. That this is how his creations are treating each other. So there's a lot of laws, a lot of laws. I think just before we even go into the laws, we should just sort of, anyone has had an experience where they ever gossiped in a way that they felt afterwards really harmed someone? Or were the victim of some really bad gossiping? Yeah, that was a yes.
I was the victim of some really bad gossiping, and it ended my plate where I worked, and it caused the managers to have me leave. Mhm.
Unfortunately, that's
Yeah,
not such a rare story as it should be. It's
right.
a horrible story, and
Mhm.
unfortunately, gossip, true or false, can really cost a person their job, their
Yeah,
reputation, their
yeah.
friendships, financial harm. I'm really, really sorry you had to go through that. Was that recent or was that a while ago?
It was 2016, so it was very difficult. It was not difficult, but it was. I tiptoed very easily going to work at Nordstrom because it was in retail. So yeah, and still things happen, but not in that way.
Well, I'm really sorry you had to experience that. And as I'm saying, unfortunately,
Yeah,
I've I've heard from a number of people this idea that when people gossip, true or false,
right.
they could literally take away someone's livelihood.
Yeah,
And
I
not
mean,
necessarily, again, I don't know your specific situation, but
well,
sometimes it's not that the people are trying to. Sometimes they are. Sometimes they're not, but they can still accomplish that same horrible thing.
right.
We, if we were what we're talking about here is don't do it. Rob and share, which is very painful, very painful, is what happened to her that people did it. So if you're the victim, like here, Robin was a victim, what we try to absorb and understand is these people made very, very, very bad choices. But that doesn't take away God from the picture.
Mhm.
And God clearly, for whatever reason, did not want me to have this job anymore. To hopefully to move on to something better, for whatever reason, God's vision of better. So we always have to hold on to that when seemingly negative things happen, especially if it's created by man, that we're not taking God out of the picture. And if God didn't want me to leave my job, he wouldn't have had me lose my job. He wouldn't have had them gossip. He wouldn't have had my managers care. They would have said, "Oh, that's ridiculous. What are you talking about? She would never do anything like that." And, whatever. So the fact that the people said it, the fact that the managers heard it, the fact that managers took it seriously, the fact that the managers had you leave your job, all of that in the end of the day has God's handiwork in. And therefore, whenever something happens, we try to take strength and comfort, solace, that, okay, God, there's some bad people in this world, but I'm not taking you out of the equation, and you love me. So whatever's happening to me, even though to me it feels very, very, very painful, I know you're part of it. I know there's a reason. I know there's a good reason. So that's what we have to tell ourselves like 5 million times. But that's only if we're the victim. We don't tell ourselves that if we're the aggressor. Oh, well, whatever I'm doing, in the end of the day, it's what God wanted. So not really my responsibility or problem or issue. No, we don't say that. You only say that if you're the victim. If you're not the victim and you're saying something, you've got to really take responsibility and understand. No joke. You could take away a person's job. You could take away a person's respect. You could take away a person's marriage. There's so many things that happen as a result of people talking, and including if it's true. A lot of times people will say, but it's true. So what? Is it harming the person? So why are you saying it? Now, sometimes there is reason to say something, and there are even certain situations where it's permissible. If there's a very evil person that's plotting to harm you, as I mentioned earlier, someone can go over and tell you that. That's not considered evil gossip. That's considered mandatory for you to preserve yourself. There's a reason, there's a purpose, there's a functionality in that talk. It's to help protect you. But just to talk about what a horrible person that person is, even though he is truly such a horrible person, no. God says, no. Don't bash my creatures that way. I don't care. That's his business. From your end, don't bash my creatures. Don't bash my creation. I love my children. I want every single one of them. I don't want you to be bashing any of them. And that's really the message we have to absorb in terms of working on ourselves. So we will stop at this point.